Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to episode number 24 of the JeopardyFan.com's live panel. And once again, I'm Andy Saunders. I will be moderating tonight's discussion. We have quite a panel with us this evening to discuss both last week's Jeopardy, preview the upcoming Teachers Tournament, as well as discuss King of the Nerds, which airs Friday nights at 9 on TBS. Tonight's panel. Let's see, we've got a lot of people tonight, so let's start off introducing first up. We have the founder of the JeopardyFan.com. Her video is choppy, but I'm sure she'll be able to talk once again. Jeannie Kenkel. We also have via audio from last week's games, Jennifer Hindert. We also have a couple champions in our midst, Brad Nehring, as well as Karen Ash. From last Thursday's game, we have Amy Schmidt, and also, let's see, we have a couple of very famous people from Jeopardy past, the one and only Arthur Chu, as well as Colby Burnett, who, of course, is one of the contestants on King of the Nerds, former Tournament of Champions winner as well. Okay, so let's start us off with some King of the Nerds discussions. Episode 2 aired last Friday night. And good news, hopefully I'm not spoiling anything, but good news for Team Smash in that they scored what can only be, or what can best be described as an upset win in the cosplay challenge. Colby, how did that feel?
It felt great because this is the only situation in this game where I don't feel that I'm going home, is if we win. So it was cosplay, and they said, well, there's actual costumes, there's a story, and there's a moral. We looked at the other team, we said, well, we're losing costumes, so I'm not going to put any time and any effort into that. And so I wrote most of the script. Like, they would ask me, like, people on my team would say, hey, like, could you, like, sew this? It's like, no, I can't do anything of that sort. I will just try to drag a story out of this, have it be funny, and then maybe we'll win on points. And we got that split decision. So I got a shout out from, like, the 4th best Hobbit. Like, that was awesome. So, I mean, yeah, it's an upset because it was a costume-focused challenge, and we completely ignored costumes and did everything else better than the other team. So I'll take it.
And I think that was I'd say that was a very good decision, considering you had the professional cosplayer on the other team. Now, let's see. You guys managed to, win. Unfortunately, the Brony was sent home. You're now 0 for 2 in coaching for the.
I mean, I'll accept that. But I did have a feeling that of anybody on the other team to have him go against Caitlin, the one who knocked out Thomas, my friend who happens to be a brownie. And I did all that I could. I mean, I'll take that loss because I can be I don't have to. I helped him out as much as I could, but I don't go home if he doesn't win. So I just had to just take that track. So see what happens next week, kids.
Speaking of next week, it looks like there's an alliance that's been formed. They've called themselves the Secret Six. Colby, you are not a part of it. Is this going to be one of... I've watched enough Survivor to know that sometimes the alliance holds up, sometimes is not. How did you feel coming, I suppose, watching it at this point, seeing this alliance form?
So, I'll be frank. Like, I knew that alliance existed on the other team. I did not know it existed with mine until, well, I guess sort of planned for it because I felt that if we ever lost again, I knew I'd be going in. I didn't know against whom. So, like, just saying, if P-Smash were to lose again, I'm in that nerd off. So I was like, all right, that's fine. So I know that I'm not in any sort of alliance, and even like alliance or not, they're coming at me anyway. So I think I was able to shield myself. I think I was able to shield myself from it just by being at least that level of alertness or that level of understanding of the situation. So, and like my friends were asking me like, hey, why did nobody approach you about being in alliance? And I just simply responded, I can think of about 375,000 reasons personally. So that is what it is.
Now, Arthur, I believe you have tried out for King of the Nerds yourself. Have you been watching this season, and what do you think of it so far?
Unfortunately, I haven't been watching much TV. I just got back from Philadelphia this weekend, so I've been traveling. But I am really glad that a fellow Jeopardy champion is on King of the Nerds. I tried out for seasons 1 and 2 for like the pilot. This is the thing. I was actually back at Trivia Kings in DC, and 2 weekends ago, and talking about the fact that they helped kind of kick off auditions. That out of all the people who did trivia in DC, I was the one that they wanted to see, on the show. That I actually got like 3 callbacks from the casting company, like an emergency callback at the end, like, well, you don't really seem like the kind of person the client wants, but we want to like package you as best as we can to like put you on the show. And it ended up not working out. I tried out again the next year and didn't work out, and then Jeopardy happened. So, it was probably for the best. But I'm very glad to see, Colby, I compared myself to you a lot because you were the champion the year before, about like people developing a storm of online hate for no good rational reason. And I was really impressed by how you handled that. And, it was something I had in my mind when. And now, to be on a reality show which is about people voting on whether or not they want you around, that takes a lot of courage. So.
Well, thank you, Arthur. It's very endearing, and thank you for that kind of support. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That people are going to make judgments about who you are, what your background is, very quickly. And there's a definite Stockholm syndrome kind of effect. It's just like, all right, we're in this together. Let's see what happens when we get into this kind of system that surrounds us. So, but you'll see. I at least made it through 2 episodes, so I'm in 3 so far. Got that going for me. So.
Well, you got to break the streak of female Kings of the Nerds, right?
Well,
breaking the streak of non-Jeopardy nerds, and yeah.
Now, one thing, I'm going to cross my fingers, and I hope that I'm not going to get in trouble for my next question. But I feel as though TBS is kind of trying to play up the women a little bit. I suppose that's the best way of putting it. Is there a kind of King of the Nerds After Dark that they're not showing us, or?
Well, if you're referring to, okay, so I'll say this: the revelry that you saw on camera, well, okay, that was real, and also my complete absence from those scenes. There's no editing. I just bailed. I simply saw what was going down. Realized that I work for the Archdiocese of Chicago, and so things matter. So it's just don't even put yourself in that situation. I am they're in one room, I'm in the opposite side of the house by myself. It's just hey, you should go hang out with him. I'm like, nah. So, is there some crazy stuff that went down? I'm just gonna say I wasn't privy to it. So. All I have to say about that.
Okay. So, I think now is probably a good time to discuss Jeopardy. I would say We have, yeah. Marissa. Well, let's start off with Marissa. She's not here, but I would say her interview, and she spoke a little bit about her Kickstarter campaign. I do remember discussing that briefly on one of our previous panels, just because the Kickstarter had started when she got the call. So I guess we can ask again, how did you guys all feel about when you heard about her Kickstarter?
Actually, I met Marissa in Philadelphia. Yeah, so I met her just yesterday. And I was actually, I think, one of the first people that one of her friends follows me on Twitter and reached out to me about it. And so I sent the link to the entire Jeopardy Tournament of Champions 2014 group on Facebook, and I was just like, look, Jeopardy history is often made by people who didn't know whether or not they could go on the show. I mean, luckily I knew I could go on the show, but if it like on the call a year earlier or 2 years earlier, I don't know if I could have. It has to do a lot with having the money and also having the flexibility in your job to be able to risk, taking time off. And so I'd had that offer even like in my first year of working there. I didn't have those days off. It would have been a lot much scarier proposition to say, I'm going to go beyond Jeopardy, and not knowing whether it would be worth it, whether I'd lose in the first game and get only $1,000 from the trouble. So I felt like there was, it was the kind of thing where the fact that she was bold enough to say, I really want to do this, and just like very honestly say, this is not, an end of the world, like kind of thing, but it's something that would be really cool, and I'd like help with this. I think that's a good thing. I think that we should have the freedom to, reach out and ask for help if needed, and I'm happy to pay it forward like that. I was very, very lucky to get that chance when I did, and I'm very happy to pass it along to others.
Yeah, I thought it was very cool. I'm just mad I didn't think of it myself. I would have hit up people at work or something like that. But like Arthur said, it really is. I had a job that allowed me to take the time off. I had the wherewithal to just kind of pack up and fly cross country, and a lot of people don't. So the fact that she was able to do that, and not only do that, but then end up winning, I mean, I think that's just a great story. And I was really mad. I was like, oh, I could have hit up so many people at work, but...
Absolutely. I actually, my wife and I took our honeymoon about a month and a half before I was on the show. So I had no paid time off anymore. So I had to go do like an unpaid trip to LA. So that was... At first I was like, I don't know if I really want to do this, actually. But it worked out, so...
Yeah, actually, one of the stories that I told, now that I'm thinking about it, the first time I was on regular Jeopardy, during my first run, I told the story of how I got my wife a present, a meteorite, one of her things that she wanted, and we couldn't afford it at the time, but I got it by crowdfunding it. And this was before crowdfunding was a big thing. But, I just had the idea, why not ask everyone to chip in on one expensive gift instead of all of us getting separate gifts? And I remember there was a divided reaction. A lot of younger people said, oh, that's so cool. And then a lot of the haters, a lot of people were like, that's so classless, asking your friends for money. You don't ask your friends for anything. And I'm like, well, I think that might be a cultural, difference.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that, and I would say that crowdfunding these days has become much more acceptable just because Kickstarter and GoFundMe or whatever has become so big these days. So I would say crowdfunding for various projects and things is much more acceptable. Now, my next question, I guess, for the entire panel, do you guys wish you'd spent a little bit more time thinking about betting? Because I know Christine probably did quite well in terms of her betting this past week, and I would say from watching myself that she definitely won her second game simply because she was able to make a very strong. Basically, she made the only bet that would win her that second game, in my opinion. And so I was wondering, after seeing that, do you guys wish you'd spent more time thinking about betting?
I would say yes, because the whole game strategy part of the game was entirely new to me. I am not an obsessive fan. I am not an Excel spreadsheet kind of person. I don't watch the show regularly, and so but a lot of my friends do, and they were ready to kind of tear me apart on on daily double strategies and on final. My one friend came up with sort of an exact list of rules of everything I did wrong on both shows. So that's just something I didn't really think about. So in hindsight, definitely, and to recognize that that is as big a part of the game as kind of being a big nerd and knowing things. I would say yeah.
It's hard in the heat of it though.
Sorry, can you repeat yourself, Amy?
I just said it's hard in the heat of it to think all that through.
Yeah, it's also like, oh my gosh, I got a daily double. Like, what do? I have 5 seconds. I just want money, please. What's the biggest number I can think of? I think that's exactly how I went down on my daily double. I was like, money now. What's the biggest number I can think of at the moment without going crazy? I was like, $5,000, please give me money now. And luckily it worked out, but
That I would say that worked out reasonably well for you. Now, Brad, on your through the looking glass daily double bet, how did do you have any regrets on that one? You had gotten the first 3 right in that category.
Yeah. So, here's the crazy thing: is I've never actually read that book. So, I'd gotten the first 3. Sort of just in my sort of blind knowledge of Alice in Wonderland lore, but I kept thinking, this one, the Daily Double one, is going to be something I've never heard of, and there I am betting a lot of money on something I've never read. So I definitely played that one cautiously, but then, I knew it immediately once they read the clue, so it was like, okay, I wish I'd bet more now, especially the way that game turned out. But.
Yeah, hindsight is 2020. I would actually chip in and say, I got a lot of praise for supposedly being a betting genius. I don't think I really was. I think most of the time getting a lock before Final Jeopardy takes that out of the picture, and that's very helpful when you're able to do that. But just like I applied a few things that people hadn't seen before, like bet for the tie, I actually feel like in terms of the last tournament, I was still kind of doing a sort of autopilot betting, like a few simple rules for betting. And in the Tournament of Champions was like specifically the time when I could have gone deeper than that, because unlike any other game of Jeopardy, you've seen all these people play before, you know how they played, you could strategize around them. And if I remember that night I was thinking, if I'd only thought about the fact that I wasn't playing 2 random people, I was playing Ben Ingram specifically, who always gets Final Jeopardy right, no matter how hard it is, then I would have bet much lower in Final Jeopardy, and then I would have won, and then I would have 250 grand instead of 100, I would have, because I was in the lead both times going to Final Jeopardy. But, it's hindsight is 2020 again. Like, I was following the rule that I kind of set for myself, just assuming that we all had an equal chance of getting it. And I can't fault myself for that, because I could have, just as easily assumed Ben was going to get it and he didn't get it, and I should, but, it's still something I kick myself over. That's where all the really tense decision-making in Jeopardy is. For an individual clue, you know it or you don't, but the bets are where the game part of it comes in.
Do you have anything to add on that, Colby? I mean, you have never played in a regular game. You've just played tournaments. So.
Yeah. So I would say that my way of looking at betting was very, very conservative. It's just with quarterfinal games, it very much comes down to, well, I have a set number in mind, and I will play around that, and I will plan my daily doubles and my final around that one point. So there's not a full ton of thinking that goes into it. In terms of betting the final, I mean, there were only two real moves that I made, but I wasn't involved in a runaway. There was the first round in the Battle of Decades when I was against Celeste and Tom. Tom couldn't catch me at all. Celeste was right behind me, and I just basically said to myself, Colby, you know absolutely nothing about, or you know so very little about this subject. The best thing you can do is put it on your opponent to get it right, because if she doesn't, then you win. And so that happened. And then in my semi and my TC, I just, went all in and was really, really surprised when, Dan, who was playing against me, decided not to. I was like, well, I think I have it right, and that worked out. So, that's about as intense as betting.
I think in hindsight, one thing I would have done is bet category agnostic. In a sense, I think there's a tendency to be like, oh, Italian cities, I really know this category, or inventors, I know nothing about this, like I'm betting based on that. I think in theory I would have been like, no matter how confident I felt about the category or how unconfident I felt about the category, I wouldn't have taken that into consideration.
Yeah, because in this last Tournament of Champions, 20th century presidential elections and Shakespearean geography, I ended up thinking too much about the category, especially Shakespearean geography. It was like, I've never gotten Shakespeare clue wrong on Jeopardy, ever. And that was like my category. But because it was the very last final Jeopardy in the Tournament of Champions, they managed to write one that was too hard for me.
Right.
No.
Yeah, I was just seeing that clue. It's like, all right, Shakespeare plays, and no English teacher. Like, it's just like no English teacher in any high school in America will teach. Like, it's so pure that. All right, it's just like it felt like they were piling up on you guys.
Yeah.
Well, while we're hating on the writers, I think I can move on to discussing various things about their writing style. This one's for the whole panel. First up, there was a category a few weeks ago titled "And the Horse You Rode In On." Definitely, if you know what that's referring to, definitely not quite G-rated. What else? Let's see. There was a Daily Double recently that relied on the age-old pickup line, "Want to see my etchings?" And, of course, Friday's Sex, Lies, and Videotape. Are we just noticing it more now, or are the writers getting more sophomoric with their writing? What do you guys think?
I don't know. I think to a degree you can tell the writers are playing off of the reaction we get on social media. I think just because of the way I interacted with my, Jeopardy appearances, they were very conscious that I was live tweeting. Everyone paid a lot of attention to my live tweeting. It became the tweeting, and so I think they're seeing. Like, it's fun to make double entendres out of what's on the Jeopardy board, and they're just playing along with it a little bit. Whether I think it's almost better if they're trying to be as innocent as possible and they let us, the raunchy humor, instead of them sort of feeding into it, but I can't fault them for trying to deliberately engage their audience. We've had this discussion so many times, like, Jeopardy has to evolve if it's going to, survive past the next decade, because it needs to reach down to the audience below the 50 to 64 audience they have right now, and the people who watch Jeopardy and tweet about it online are a big cohort of that, and so they're trying different things. I'm not gonna judge them for it,
I think, Jeopardy would have to get a lot raunchier, I think, to not be considered like sort of the prestigious game show, like the prestigious primetime show. I think what they're doing now is kind of fun, and it's not pushing the bar too much, and I think it's enough to bring in younger people without ruffling the older feathers. So.
It's definitely no Family Feud, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I have to admit, I saw the show with the etchings reference, but
I don't know what that means. Am I under? Have I been under a rock? Can somebody explain it to me, or is it family friendly enough for that?
Basically, the idea being that behind that is that one attempts to lure somebody back to their place of domicile or place of residence by saying, "Well, would you like to see my etchings?" Pretending that they have, are slightly more higher class than they might otherwise be. It's been around for a while, the line, and it's kind of become cliche as a pickup line. So that's kind of where they were going with that one.
Got it. It just went over my head completely. Yeah. So thank you for.
You weren't the only. You weren't the only one. So. Well, I'll just leave it at that. And another writing thing, Friday's Final Jeopardy. I know, Karen, you've had it easier because obviously the writers gave you the, or so I should say the contestant coordinators told you, obviously, that it was going to be a what answer, I believe, which probably made it a lot easier, but playing at home, there were two pronouns in Friday's Final, which, I mean, me playing along at home, I had to pause and make my tape and make sure, okay, what are they looking for? Because for those of you who missed the show, the question or the category was inventors, and the clue in 1702, Thomas Savery wrote in one of his designs, such an engine will do the work of labor or 10 or 12 these. And of course, there was the confusion, in my opinion at least, in having a pair of pronouns to. It could have, in terms of the audience at home, it could have distracted or it could have misled somebody playing along at home as to what the writers specifically were looking for. And yeah, obviously it's easy. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Karen.
No, but even being there, it took me a really long time to parse that phrase, because I think you fall into the same garden path. You're like, wait, are we looking for the his or are we looking for the these? So it took me ages to kind of stop and be like, okay, I think they're looking for the these, and I hope it's horses. But that was a really one where I was just kind of like, so I'm glad the camera wasn't on me, because I'm pretty sure I was there like the whole time.
How did the rest? I don't know if any of the rest of you were still in the audience watching on Friday, but or how did you guys feel at home watching, or in the audience watching, seeing that final on Friday?
When I'm looking at it now, it seems like clearly 10 or 12 of these, and I would focus on that. I mean, I can see where the this part of Karen's competitors were, but I don't think it's that difficult to wade through what they really want.
Now, Amy, it looked like you were going to say something. Can you go ahead?
Yeah, I was just asking the audience for that question, and it has to do with the horses, but I had trouble parsing Wednesday's game. Karen, you can maybe remind me, with the two actors and the two Oscar-nominated roles, and that totally confused me.
Yeah, that was a hard one to kind of. I could see how that was a hard one.
It was way worse than.
Okay, sorry. Apologies for the brief technical hiccup on my own end there. Which night again was the actors one?
That was Tuesday.
Oh, that was Tuesday. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so that was one of two performers to win two Best Actor Oscars for films that won Best Picture. For the record, I matched Christine's answer with Daniel Day-Lewis, but I think that was a difficult final to.
Right.
Yeah, Oscar ones. Sandy Baker was always so good at all of that kind of trivia, and I was really scared that I was going to have that in my game against her.
Right.
Because I just lost the previous game, and I was sitting with Eric, who was the other contestant that lost that game. We just kind of sat there, looked at each other, and I think my movie knowledge is fairly strong. That one stuck there. That was a really good one, a really hard one, I should say.
I felt the same way, being there.
Yeah.
Okay, I actually, with the teachers tournament coming up this week, I think it's interesting. I mean, Jennifer, you were introduced as a teacher. I'm correct with that, correct?
Yes.
Now, when you tried out, were you asked if you wanted to be considered for the teachers tournament?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
They did mention that there was a teachers tournament this year. Do they? I don't know if they have them every year. But they did mention that there was one, but that was just to the whole group, not to me specifically.
Okay. Do you wish you'd been part of the teachers tournament instead of the regular show? No, like after seeing how your game turned out?
Yeah. I mean, I was certainly happy to have a chance to be on the show, tournament or not. But you know, it is what it is. So while it would have been nice to be in the teachers tournament, it was nice to be a contestant on the show as well. Results not results aside. But I don't know how they make that determination, and I actually, maybe you guys have some insight. I would love to know how they decide who gets picked for auditions, who gets picked to be on the show, who gets picked to be in the tournament, because I really have no knowledge of that.
I was curious about that too.
I would not have picked myself to be on the show, probably. Wondering what they saw that
don't sell yourself short, Jennifer.
Well, you're sweet to say that, but really, I mean, I'm just curious about the process, if anyone has insight.
Well, I think Colby might probably have the best idea in terms of how one gets picked for the teachers tournament. Do you want to shed any insight on that, Colby?
I mean, other than, essentially when I was at Callbacks in Chicago, all they did was they announced in general there were people of all walks of life there, and they just specifically mentioned that, if you have a show in the past few seasons you've had a teacher tournament, so please alert us that you're a teacher and we might have you on that show rather than regular shows. Like, all right, I don't think anything of it, and sure enough I get called in August and asked to be on the teachers tournament, which I of course say yes to, because why would you say no in that case? And all the other thing that I recall is that our alternate at the tournament, named Jonathan, the teacher in San Diego, and when he was on, they specifically had him come back later in the season as a regular contestant. So he was in the pool. They knew that if he couldn't participate in this one, that he would be called back shortly, be on the regular show in the near future. So that's all I know.
Now, to Jennifer's point, as far as I know, I mean, basically people take the online test. If the contestant department feels that the person has passed the online test, they are put into a random drawing for their selected audition city. And if you get drawn randomly for your audition city, you get an audition. At that point, you would go through the in-person audition. If they feel at the in-person audition you'd be a good contestant, then you get put into the contestant pool for a period of about 18 months. They can call you within that period. I know there have also been people who have been called after the 18-month window has passed to be on the show, and I mean, if they call you, they want you to promote to Los Angeles to tapes. So there's a lot of randomness to it. Lots of people do try out, and I guess anyone who gets called should definitely consider themselves one of the best people out there in America. And definitely, I think Karen's right, Jennifer, that you should not sell yourself short at all with that. So,
Thank you.
This was actually my second time being called to be on the show. I actually tried out, and I want to say maybe 2009, and got called to be on the show then. But the week before I got the call, I was actually on Cash Cab, or had taped Cash Cab. And so I think there was the rule where you couldn't be on another game show within a year or 6 months or something like that. So I was like, sorry, maybe I'll try out again in the future. And then my friends were always like, whatever happened to Jeopardy? And I was like, oh yeah, I should probably try out for that again. So that's what happened this year.
Nice.
and I think it is possible for people to do get the. Some people only get the call once. Some people, people have turned down the call and not been called back a second time. But others have had to turn it down and have received the call a second time. I know you've mentioned that now, Karen. I know a couple of other people who've been in your situation, and I know a couple of people who have been in the other situation where they've been called once, have had to turn it down for whatever reason or another, and then have not been called again. So something to keep in mind if you're listening and have aspirations for being on the show. That the chances are there to get called yes or no a second time if you can't be on the first time. Let's see. I have one question actually for Arthur specifically. Ben Ingram, a couple of weeks ago on our panel, we got into a discussion about the buzzer and buzzer timing. And Ben, in fact, said on this show that, Arthur, he felt that your buzzer timing was faster than that of Brad Rudder's.
Well, he's
Do
never
you agree with that?
He's never played against Brad Rudder, has he? So I'm not sure he will know. I mean, it's very flattering, but I have the feeling that when you're against somebody and you're struggling against them, you tend to exaggerate their prowess a little bit in your head. And I kind of feel like there was some of that there. But buzzer timing it's one of those things that everyone kind of argues about. And all I can say from my experience is the weird thing was I had read a lot of articles actually about Jeopardy. That's what I did. I Googled Jeopardy, and a lot of people said you can't wait for the lights to come on. You have to anticipate the lights so that you hit at the same time that the lights come on. And I was trying to do that, and I was actually, I think, locking myself out a lot. And I've since then heard, like, hey, if you look at Maggie's contestant board, people lock themselves out all the time. It's very common. But I actually went and tested myself on buzzing before coming back for the tournament, and all I did was I took a test online to gauge your reaction time. And I actually found out, hey, my reaction time, if I'm paying attention, if I'm on, my reaction time is actually in the 80th percentile of the population. Probably because I play video games or whatever, but I was like, you know what? If I actually wait for the light and just wait for the light and hit it when I see the light, I'm probably going to buzz in earlier than other people and know that I'm not locking myself out. And so I sort of disciplined myself this time around to just buzz when I actually saw the light. And I was suddenly dominating on the buzzer, whereas my first time around, it took me a while before I started beating people on the buzzer. And I kind of feel like that made a big difference for me. It might not be the same for other people, but I kind of hear anecdotally, hey, people lock themselves out all the time, and you don't get to know, you don't actually get feedback telling you that you've locked yourself out. But my advice would be, hey, if you want to be fast on the buzzer, wait, do what they tell you to do, wait and watch for the light. Or for me.
So how did the rest of you guys find the buzzer during your appearance?
Tricky.
You're right. Dastardly.
Yeah.
And it's something I guess I kind of knew, but I would say 90% of the questions, all three of us knew, and it really was a matter of who got to that. And you'd hear everybody, and there were questions that I knew, and I would say so many of the questions, any of the two other people I played on either show, if they had buzzed in earlier, it would have been theirs. And so the buzzer, so for me, what helped was I didn't pay attention to the lights at all. I had tried during some of the rehearsals, and it just wasn't working. Anticipating Alex finishing is what helped me, and that's when I was waiting for him to finish and kind of jumping off that. But it took me a while to figure that out too.
Yeah, coach me during the breaks because I was getting in too early, I think, because I was reading. And you can read faster than Alex can speak. So you're reading it, you think, I know that, and then you get blocked out.
Yeah, I think you definitely had some struggles on the buzzer yourself, Amy. And did the contestant coordinators come up to you at all and say anything?
Oh yeah, they spent a lot of time with me during rehearsal and during the break. They were spending a lot of time with me, and Greg was even trying to walk me through and get me to listen to his voice and buzz in. Because Karen and I were watching when we were in the audience, you could see their screens. They know when the buzzers are live and when they're not, and they can watch and see how people are doing. So they really did try to provide a lot of support for me.
It seemed like they really make an effort to help people get used to the buzzer before they even have to play. And if you struggle, like I think I had 0 going into both games and going into the first break. I mean, the producer just comes up to you and says, just relax, or just ring in half a second later or something like that. Everyone, I think, takes some getting used to, and then you get these nice little grooves, and it's awesome.
It was a lot harder to actually push than I thought it would be, because they give you the Jeopardy pens, and they're just like click, 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 and then to act. Maybe it's my weak little wrists, I don't know. But I was like, wow, this is gotta actually put some effort into this. So that was a surprise. I expected it to be like the pens. Click, 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 click.
I feel like when people ask why there hasn't been another Ken Jennings, and Jeopardy actually said, "Oh, we're taking steps to make sure the game is more fair for new challengers," and they didn't change any of the rules. But I've been told from people who were on the show before and after that they used to be very perfunctory about checking to make sure you were doing well with the buzzer, and now they spend a lot more time trying to make sure that you know how to use the buzzer and you're buzzing in consistently before they let you play. And I think that by itself, like that is most of the advantage of being a returning champion, is having buzzer experience. And by sort of tweaking that, I mean, Ken's a great player, but I think that is also the reason no one, other great players haven't been in the like 70 game or 60 game streak territory, because that was by far what allowed him to like steamroll over other people.
Now, that is actually, for my remembering Ken's run a few years ago, they actually started midway through Ken's run, about game 48 or so, when they came back to start taping in season 21. That was when they decided, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give more rehearsal time to challengers and really start looking at things. And so that is definitely what Arthur's right in that that's definitely been a major change and a major result of Ken's run, actually, that they're giving challengers much more practice on the buzzer. Now we're at about the 45-minute mark, so it's about the time where I ask if any of you guys have any questions for anyone else on the panel at this point.
I don't have a question, but Karen, I just think you're super fun to watch. I really enjoyed watching your games at home.
Thank you. I've been trying not to read anything about it. I've been really trying to stay off. I've been on a couple of things. I did have like a Reddit kind of mini AMA going, but I've been trying. But one thing everyone is saying is like, why do you move so much? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I actually watched myself on Friday, and I was like, wow, I really am kind of just like swaying about here and there. And I would chalk that up to just one kind of, as you've probably noticed over the course of this, I'm kind of a mover in general. And two, I was wearing really nice but really kind of uncomfortable shoes, and I'm on the platform, and so I'm just trying not to fall off the platform. So I'm kind of like alternating legs and things like that. But thank you so much. I'm glad it's been entertaining. I hope I continue to remain entertaining for my next 85 shows, or oops, I've said too much. But
Did you get a chance, Karen, actually, to do much preparation work in between your tapings, or did you have like a Tuesday, Wednesday kind of deal where you didn't get a chance, where you didn't come back, have to go back out to New York and then back to LA in between games 2 and what's to come?
No, I taped, I was a Wednesday, Tuesday, so instead of flying back to New York and coming back to LA, I just stayed. I had never been to LA before. I'm not a really good flyer, so I really didn't want to kind of fly out on a Friday only to come back 2 days later or something like that. So I decided to stay in LA for a couple of days and do all the touristy things. So I did have time between the show you'll see Friday and then the shows you'll see in 2 weeks.
Okay.
It might have been an advantage of mine that I'm from LA, so I didn't. I was like, I don't want to do any touristy things, so there was no opportunity I was giving up by just chilling.
Right.
Actually, I have a question for Colby. So you tried out for King of the Nerds before Jeopardy or after Jeopardy for season 2?
So it was right after. So right after I did my run, the producers contacted me. They found, school teachers, so of course they found my work email pretty easily. They said, hey, you need to be on the show and you need a video. And it's like, I don't have any equipment. And basically hunted down the recently graduated head of the AV club at my high school. And like, hey, like, I know you're not a student here anymore, but can you do me a favor? And sure enough, like, did enough magic so that I made something tolerable for the producer. And it just kind of went from there. And I thought they really wanted me for the second season. They didn't take me, and then they wanted me back for the third. So here I am. Do you have to go into any more detail, or is that it?
Well, I just wanted to know, like, I don't know. Do you think being on Jeopardy first has like created a kind of image that played into them wanting you on King of the Nerds, or if you've been on King of the Nerds first, or do they try to play up the bad guy of Jeopardy kind of thing?
I think that it would work very well because you know how, like, generally, just in my demeanor, I'm going to come off as very confident, arrogant even, and the concept of a arrogant nerd would make for excellent television, and I believe the producers felt that very much, and they said, oh, this guy's gold, we need to have him on. So, and that's fine, because you think about Andy, understand that I go in there and I am not the most confident nor the most arrogant of the group. At least that's how they're going to play us up. And, we'll see how that turns out. What they did, footage that they shot. So, but it was relatively easy the second time that they really wanted me to be on the show, and it was fairly obvious. And I do remember, like, the producers, if you get on, they asked, they show up and they're like, hey, like, you're on the show, and I don't have any sort of reaction whatsoever. Like, my general demeanor is like, yes, like, you were willing to fly me out here and do all these things, so, like, clearly you want me on the show. And, like, producer's like, I thought you'd be happier. So it's like, yeah, I am happy. Like, I just knew that I was going to be on the show anyway, so thanks.
Nice.
And that's what they wanted. But yeah, I'm there because of Jeopardy.
Yes.
I see no further questions in my own things. So, does anyone else have any further questions?
Yeah, I've got a question for, I guess, the other players who played this week. Did you do anything special for your shows? Did you have like a viewing party? Did you get your families together? I had a big viewing party at a bar here in Brooklyn, so that was really fun. And people didn't know, and people actually thought, based on my demeanor, that I might have lost. So it was kind of fun to see that. So I was just curious what you guys did to celebrate your shows.
Was that Thursday night? Karen, was that Thursday night at the bar?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Go ahead, Amy. Sorry.
Yeah, was that Thursday night at the bar?
That was Thursday night at the bar, and then so everyone was like, "So, where's tomorrow's party?" And I was like, "At your houses."
Because I had there's a hotel conference center on the campus where I work, so we had a big party at the bar also that night. So people were cheering me and booing you in Princeton.
I was about to say, did they boo me and cheer you because my audience did? And I was like, "No, you guys, Amy and Marissa were both really nice, but anytime, just by default, I tried to comment, but anytime I got one wrong or you guys got one right, they booed." I was
Yeah,
like,
I know.
they were
It's
both
like
really nice.
in college, right?
Yeah.
It was a
like,
lot of fun. It was a lot.
I didn't do anything quite that fancy. I teach school, and the school day ends at 4:05, and the show airs at 4:30. So I have a TV in my classroom, so I sat here and kind of watched it, and other teachers trickled in from down the hall to see what was going on. But I tried not to make a very big deal out of it. But you know, a lot of my students knew when it was on, and apparently I was Snapchat famous and trending on Twitter or Instagram or something like that. And they also made an internet meme out of me. So I guess
Oh, that's when you know you've made it big, Jennifer.
yeah, I think they're having some laughs at my expense. But I mean, it was fun. I wouldn't change it. I mean, I would change it, but I wouldn't.
And haters gonna hate. That's all they do.
Yeah, I think Arthur's going to agree with that one. Haters going to hate. So.
Yeah, well, it's all for the best in the end, I think.
I think so too.
They make themselves look bad, so
Yeah,
they
right.
draw attention to you.
I was really impressed with how supportive and friendly everybody was. Nobody was trying to, you know, play mind games in the green room or anything. Everybody, you know, really cheered. We cheered each other on. It was wonderful.
Absolutely.
I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice surprise to see everyone backstage being so cordial and so nice. Like, I guess I don't know what I expected, but it was nice.
Shark Tank.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the first day of my taping, we all got in the shuttle bus, and Will, who I played against in my first game, made some comment about how it was just like the Hunger Games, and that was about as tense as it got. My whole game. But yeah, to answer your question, Karen, I also did a viewing party at a bar, and I lucked out because it was a Friday night, so that made it a little more of a, I guess, a convivial atmosphere.
You're right. Yeah.
But yeah, it was fun.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, it's almost 7:30 here. We've been on the air for just under an hour, so I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. We actually had a few viewers tonight live, and of course, people will be able to tune in later on at thejeopardyfan.com if they missed anything. So thank you guys all for taking part. Once again to Karen, Jennifer, Colby, Brad, Amy, and last but not least, Arthur. Our next one is taking place scheduled for Saturday, February 7th at around 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern. So hopefully you'll be able to tune in then. That will be 25, as I like to say, with the number 25 after the Hunger Games came out, the Quarter Quell. So I'd like to thank everyone once again for tuning in and joining our panels. Have an excellent night.